Welcome to our Toronto Real Estate Podcast. The first 10 weeks of 2024 are now in the books, but what does this mean for the spring market? Today, we're talking with four of our top agents from Marin to get their take on the trends, forecasts, spring predictions, and the best advice for buyers and sellers entering or moving up the property ladder in Toronto this year. My name is Ralph Fox, and I am the broker of record and co-founder of Marin. I am absolutely thrilled to be your host today and share the insights from their boots on the ground perspective. Okay, well, Jerome, we are so happy to have you here today and have the opportunity to pick your brain, boots on the ground, in terms of what you're seeing currently in the Toronto real estate market. So we have a few questions that we'd like to dig into. Basically, one of the things I really would like to understand is we are now 10 weeks into 2024. I'd really like to know, how are you finding the market, thus far early into 2024, early days?
This year's felt quite similar to last year. I always think of it at the beginning of the year as kind of lines up with people's New Year's resolutions to go back to the gym. You go to the gym on first week of January and there's a lot of people there. Then by the end of February, the numbers are back to what they're kind of supposed to be. And I think the same's been true in the market, particularly with entry-level freehold. There's a flood of buyers, it seems like, made a New Year's resolution to get out and buy a home. And there was a ton of demand right out of the gates. Early January, I think it was the second week of January, things started to kick off. And we're seeing sort of 10, 20 offers on these entry-level freehold homes. So I'm talking kind of $1 million to $1.5 million, east, west, midtown. We weren't seeing crazy sale numbers though. Like the numbers I was doing market valuations on, the sale prices weren't exceeding those. And it seemed like a lot of those buyers who had a first or second kick of the can in January realized very quickly and harshly that they need to step up their game if they want to be able to buy a property in such a competitive landscape. So continuing on into February, the last 4 or 5 weeks here, there's been less offers on the exact same asset class, but we're starting to see sale prices are kind of exceeding top end market valuation. And in some instances that I've seen, make me a little nervous for properties not even appraising. So there's a lot of buyers out there, I think, picked up properties in the last month that are kind of fingers crossed that the market continues to go up and to the right so that they can justify the purchase price they paid for their property. The big thing, I guess, from a statistics standpoint, is that the percentage of relisted properties in Toronto has fallen substantially, particularly in February. If you look back to the peak in November, 33% of new listings in November 2023 were relists. So that's somebody put it on the market, took it down because they couldn't find a buyer for it and relisted it. That was 1 in 3 properties. And February last month, that was down to 16%, which is more in line with what we would expect to see in more of a balanced or seller favored market. The absorption rate for freehold is about 1.3 months in February. And that's slightly below February average if you look back over the last 10 years. So I guess all that to say, it's competitive entry-level freehold, and we're going to see how things play out for the rest of the quarter here.
Well, what's interesting is we saw a lot of those properties that didn't sell in October, November, and December suddenly sell in January and February, and we certainly had a few of our share in that category. And so it looks like we've sort of cleared a bit of a backlog of sitting inventory. So it'll be interesting to see how that shapes out when we move into the spring. But also, what are you seeing? Because I know you have a lot of buyer clients at all price levels, some even into the super luxury price point. What are you seeing above that 1.5 and up market?
I guess I'll speak to a couple specific things I've been looking at, sort of the $2 to $2.5 million range in the West End, particularly at Etobicoke. I was surprised by how much demand there was out of the gates. There was a property we offered on, I think it was late January, early February. There were 7 offers on a place that sold for 2.725, which is a lot of offers in that price category. So that took me a bit by surprise. That's petered off a little bit. I haven't seen that many offers on properties in the same class since then. And then in the super luxury end, like I guess we'll talk 5, 7, 8, $10 million. Things are chugging along. Things are moving. I wouldn't say that there's a heavily weighted advantage to sellers or buyers at this point. There certainly are a lot of sellers out there that have put a ton of money into call it a Forest Hill home, bought it for $4 or $5 million, put $600 a foot in it, and have hoped to flip out of it. And those people just got caught in really bad timing. People that bought in 2021, 2022, put, $2.5 million into a property. A lot of those people, if they're selling now and accepting numbers that are being presented by buyers, those people are breaking even or even losing money on those house flips. Things will need to pick up if you want to see that spread increase and luxury flipping become a thing again. So I think the top end of the market is as balanced as it gets relative to the lower end.
And we haven't talked about condos at all. Certainly, we're in a time period where we have two different markets. We have the freehold market and the condo market, completely divergent of one another. What are you seeing on the condo side of things right now?
Yeah, condos, prices have actually held up. And this is a bit of a surprise to me. We were seeing absorption rates at 5.5 months for condos back in October, November, which was the highest we've seen on record since they started tracking absorption rates through the Toronto Real Estate Board. And so with that combined with high interest rates and the rental market really, really grinding to a halt starting in October, I would have expected to see condo prices fall further than they have. And effectively where we're at today, $725K is the average price for a condo in Toronto, which is the same as it was in August. There hasn't been as much downward pressure on prices for condos compared to what I predicted was going to happen for the start of the year.
Yeah, that's true. And like in October, November, it was almost like the condo market had been given up for dead. And then in January, we saw a 37% increase in condo sales year over year, which really helped start to clean out some of the inventory. And we've seen that play into February as well. So it's definitely getting more balanced than it was because we were clearly in a buyer's market for a few months there, which is very unique to see in Toronto. So going back to your sort of surprises early into the year, what are you seeing out there that's really surprised you based on what you were expecting to see January 1?
Yeah, condos more than anything. There's a lot of new construction condos coming online right now. I think there's 5 or 6 buildings I've been looking at where people have been getting the keys for early occupancy. The Well development, 123 Portland. There's a place on Widmer that just popped up. Places like those, people bought those pre-construction $1,500 plus a foot. And today those things are worth substantially less, call it 15, 20%, maybe even 30% less than the price they paid for it. And so when you have that new inventory coming to market and people so negative cash flow, I would imagine, I kind of predicted and have been surprised that prices have not fallen further. I'm in a lot of WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups that talk about people advertise assignment sales. And I'm looking at those assignment sales and doing the math on them. And yes, people are selling pre-construction condos or assigning them for lower prices than they paid for them 3 or 4 years ago. But those prices to me still are nowhere near where they need to be for them to be interesting to my client base, just on a straight investment analysis perspective. So I guess me and probably most of the market expected condos to take more of a lumping at the beginning of the year. And they seem to have held up pretty well.
And what are you seeing in terms of future, looking into the near future, not long-term right now, into the spring of 2024? What are you looking at, given where we're at versus where you think we're going to be, let's say, 10 more weeks from now?
March is typically the fastest moving month in Toronto real estate, based on absorption rate. Over the last 10 years, I think freehold average absorption rate was somewhere around 1.3 months. That is usually, a lot of people saying, I'm planning on selling my house. They don't want to do it right at the beginning of the year. It comes online. There's just a lot of moving pieces that kind of fall into place and everything happens in March. So I would expect we're going to see continued increased competition for entry-level freehold. I'd expect to see condo prices to remain flat. They've surprised me that they haven't gone down. So I got to temper my prediction here and say flat. I think investors are really feeling the pain of the increased borrowing rates, the new condo inventory hitting the market, and a really dead rental market. But I've been proven wrong before, so I'll predict flat for now. And then I think we're going to continue to see more of these, I'll call them flips gone wrong, where investors just got the timing wrong on buying at the peak of the market in early 2022. renovating over a year and a half period time, and then having those come to market right now. I've seen some relistings recently that just make me, I feel the pain of these investors that took a big swing on trying to flip a property, but at the same time, it's the reality of the market. It's not a great time to be doing that. And so I think if somebody's looking for a fully renovated place and they've got big budget, they don't want to renovate property themselves, there's going to be deals for flips that had bad timing out there. So I'd expect to see that continue for the next at least couple months here.
Okay. And what sort of advice are you giving your buyer clients right now?
You could ask me this question at any point, and my response is going to always start with the same: is the fundamentals still apply. You got to get out, see lots of properties. You really got to get dialed in on buyer competition and pricing. How many offers are getting registered? What are properties selling for? What percentage of these properties are listing with bid dates? And of those, what percentage of them are selling on bully offers? You need to be out there monitoring the market to be really dialed in with all that. And so that doesn't change whether, market conditions are different. But if you're focused on entry-level freehold, you got to act quickly right now. There's no question. I helped clients buy a house, I think 6 hours after it hit the market a couple Fridays ago. And similar to other properties we'd seen, if we had waited for a bid date and hadn't put a bully offer in, we probably would have ended up paying more, or the house would have gotten out of reach, out of budget for my clients. So if you do your homework ahead of time in that entry-level freehold market, act quick. Don't wait for the bid date. Jump in there as long as you've done your homework and you're confident because you've seen lots of properties and you've read through many inspection reports. Act fast because it doesn't look like entry-level freehold is slowing down anytime soon. And I think that's where we're going to continue to see a lot of pressure on the market. If you're focused on buying a condo right now, apply the fundamentals, but don't be afraid to negotiate. You don't need to jump in and offer, 2 hours after something's been sitting on the market. There's a lot of sellers out there that are upgrading from a condo to a freehold home. And if they made the mistake of buying freehold before selling their condo, you might have a lot more leverage than you would have in different market conditions and be able to wait for that first weekend of showings. And if no offers come out of, an open house or 4 or 5 days on market, that's when a seller starts to get a little antsy and wonder if they are going to be able to sell their home and not have to carry 2 mortgages when they close on their next home. So, don't jump in as quickly as you would for entry-level freehold. But obviously, if it's the right property, you've done your homework, don't be afraid to go buy it either. So just be cautious and know you have a little more leverage than you have historically in the month of February.
Awesome. And what are you telling your seller clients right now?
I mean, if you've got, it depends on the situation, obviously, but if you've got a solid freehold property to sell and you're upgrading, let's say, sell first. You shouldn't have an issue getting multiple offers as long as the house is in a good neighborhood, good condition. If you're selling a condo and moving to a condo, I would likely sell first, then buy. All depends on the circumstances, financial situation, how nice the condo is, what you're upgrading to. But if you're selling freehold property, entry level particularly, selling first shouldn't be an issue. Buying first shouldn't be an issue if you want to sell after.
Okay, awesome. Are there any interesting trends right now that you're seeing? Boots on the ground, specific to buyers or sellers that you think might be interesting to talk about?
Yeah, I had something a little more thoughtful written down, but something just popped in my head that I need to vent about. These goddamn light fixtures I see in so many homes these days are so bad. People go out and they spend their whole budget on, the flooring or countertops in a kitchen. Then they end up putting in these, Wayfair lights that cost $23, and they're that cool blue light that comes out and it just makes, a lot of homes not look good. Kind of faux pretend nice light fixtures. Don't do that if you're a seller. That's a trend that you don't want to be on. If you're a buyer and you're walking through a house, then it's clearly got great bones, but it's got terrible lighting. Take advantage. There's going to be people that are turned off, even just by the lights, no pun intended.
My biggest pet peeve are when you have mismatched light bulbs for lighting, so that you've got that cold white light and then the warm yellow light, and they're clashing with each other. And you're like, why do I have a headache?
Yes.
You never want people to be thinking we're talking about the lighting. You want it just to blend in and actually add to the experience of being in the property, not distracting. And you can actually, for $300 or $400, you can get some pretty good light fixtures out there. So you don't necessarily have to break the bank. So very interesting trend that you picked out that I wasn't expecting. So you caught me off guard with that one, but very true. Okay, so now we're going to move into the rapid fire portion of our conversation here. So in like 3 to 5 words max, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I look forward to hearing your answers, as I'm sure many of our viewers do as well. Best neighborhood for first-time buyers?
Woodbine Corridor, north of Danforth, east of Woodbine.
Best neighborhood for first-time condo buyers?
West Queen West, particularly King West between Strawn and Bathurst.
Favorite condo building?
168 King Street East, King George Square. Love that.
Favorite luxury building?
Four Seasons. It doesn't get much better.
Best neighborhood for long-term appreciation?
I'm going to go back to Woodbine Corridor, north of Danforth, east of Woodbine.
Best building concierge team in the city?
33 and 65 Harvard Square, 50-year-old buildings. Property manager's been there for 30 years. It's like a Florida retirement community. Great service.
Awesome. And last question here, Jerome, and then we're going to let you go. What is your favorite residential street in Toronto?
Pine Ave in the beaches, cobblestone, winding street over a ravine.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Nice. That's a great choice. Well, Jerome, thank you so much for joining and sharing your insights on what you're seeing boots on the ground in the market. I'm sure our viewers will very much enjoy your insights, and your commentary about lighting, I'm sure, will resonate well as well. So thanks again, Jerome, and we'll see you soon.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Ralph, how you doing?
Good, Ian. So happy to have you here today and have you share your thoughts with not just myself, but with viewers on what's happening in the market, where you see things going this spring, which is always the topic of question in Toronto real estate. So thank you once again so much for joining us today. So, okay, my first question is, now that we are give or take 10 weeks into the new year, 2024, how are you finding the market?
I'm actually finding it the last couple of weeks quite active. The buyers are back. The buyers are very active, and the buyers are quite aggressive too. I think the conversation around interest rates coming down has caused people to want to get the jump on it because they know it's going to get worse before it gets better.
So you found a big shift in sentiment, essentially. Okay.
It started at the beginning of the year, but it's really picked up steam in the second half of February and March.
Awesome. And is where we're at now where you thought we would be? And are there any surprises that you've seen, given where we're at, from where you thought we would be on January 1?
I think the only surprise is how quickly it's happening. I actually sort of thought that this spring market was going to be where it began its flight and took off, but no one's waiting for that. I think people who would like to be done before it gets there, because finding themselves in multiples as buyers is going to become more and more and more commonplace.
And are you seeing this in all asset classes? Like, I know low rise is definitely on fire, but are you seeing this in condos as well? Or are you speaking specific to one asset class? Talk about change in sentiment.
It's a good question. I think the languishing condo market is actually picking up steam, and I think that's a bit slower than low rise for sure, than freehold. But I think with this much fierce competition in the low rise market, it's only really going to be a matter of time before those 2+1, 3-bedroom condos actually become a respite for people who find themselves choked out of the housing market.
Yeah, it's something we talk about a lot, and we've seen in other cycles before, where you have this gap between low rise and condos. And as that gap gets wider and wider and wider due to affordability, that's when you see condos start to pick up.
That's exactly it. I think it's only a matter of time. You think that will impact the rental market too, and have that pick up, where there'll be even people who are like, no, I'm out of all of this. This is too competitive for me in every way.
Well, it's interesting because the rental market definitely has been struggling, and I think many are surprised because the narrative continually is the rental market is always out of control. I think with talk of recession and uncertainty in the economy and lots of tech layoffs, that we've seen a lot of people decide to move back home for various reasons. So I think we have a lot more inventory, which is being combined with new construction coming online. We're especially in the condo market. We're seeing a lot more vacancies, a lot more options for renters than they normally would have.
Mm-hmm.
So I think once we start to see the narrative about the economy start to turn around, I think we'll see dramatic tightening of the rental market. But I think we're some time away. And also just due to seasonality, it is a slower time for the rental market traditionally right now anyway. So it'll probably pick up some slack going into summer, but it probably will not be one of the banner strong years where we see the market go up 10% in rents. It'll probably just be a little bit flat for now, which is fine because there's just only so much people can afford, knowing that you need to make $80,000 or $90,000 for a one bedroom.
Yeah.
Well, I think the rental market will struggle, and I think we will see investors continue to sit on the sideline, but the resale market should be really, really strong.
Yeah, and it's already showing those signs of taking off for this year.
For sure.
Yep.
And how do you see, going into the next question, is how do you see the spring market, which is normally a very busy time in Toronto real estate as the weather starts to change? How do you see, as we enter into spring market, the spring market shaping up?
I think this is going to intensify. I think the last 2 years, these buyers have all been sitting on their hands or waiting on the sidelines or waiting for some kind of positive sign, and they're all coming back into the market. But it's the really A-type aggressive ones who are already there. And I think we're going to see some of the people who have been holding off, doing their tax returns, getting through March break, Easter, Passover, all the holidays and everything else, and showing up in April and joining this already intense and fast-moving machine and just making it worse. So my word, I think, for anything after April 1 is going to be intense and intensifying probably until the end of March, mid-June.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, the narrative becoming more and more the consensus that we're at the end of interest rate increases, and people are trying to front run the Bank of Canada, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an interesting time for sure. And how are you advising both your buyer clients and seller clients navigating right now this crossover period as things start to continue to heat up?
Every buyer I've got in every segment, this doesn't really change much because we do this anyway, but I'm telling them to stay alert for opportunity. Don't skip your MLS listings. Don't skip your listed alerts or House Sigma alerts, whatever it is you're looking at. Look at things immediately and let's get there because they won't wait for you and they won't wait until the weekend. So for buyers, always treat this like a part-time job. When that call comes in for something new, if it looks hot, let's go see it as quickly as we possibly can and make a move if we're going to make a move. Sellers wouldn't be hurt by waiting another few weeks. Take the time to get your property looking its very best, like Fox Marin does, and all the marketing tools in place. But if you're ready to go right now, that also isn't a terrible thing. So selling now, not a terrible move. Selling in a few weeks, selling in that spring market would be great.
Okay. And this is a traditional question that we always face as active realtors in Toronto. And the answer changes depending upon where the market is. But how do you recommend when somebody needs to buy and sell or is looking to buy and sell? How are you advising clients right now?
It's the unfortunate thing about this question is it's not a one size fits all. So really it's a conversation about your needs and wants, your finances, the type of property you have, its condition, the kind of property you want, and what that segment of the market is doing. And basically figuring out the situation that has the least amount of calculated risk for my client, but also letting them know that regardless of which one you do choose, there's always a bit of a leap of faith and a bit of calculated risk that will go into it. But which one of those situations or scenarios is going to have you feeling the most comfortable and positive about the outcome? That's usually my answer to that question. And I'm sorry, it's not more concrete.
Well, it's interesting because in a shifting market, it's very not one size fits all. But when Toronto market is rocking and we are deep into seller's territory, the answer generally is a lot more clear cut. But when you're in a situation like this, especially when some asset classes are doing better than others and you're looking to move, let's say from a condo into a house, a low-rise property, it can become infinitely more complicated of an answer versus if you're staying within the same asset class versus what type of market conditions we're in. And right now, when you're in this crossover situation, it definitely requires a lot of nuance for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So are there any interesting trends or things that you're seeing right now from a boots on the ground perspective in the market?
Only to kind of reiterate that the first-time buyer freehold segment is hot, hot, hot. They're like that. Anywhere from, if you can find something for $1 million or less than $1 million, up to 1.6 is an extremely competitive segment. This is a lot of, I would say, young couples, bank of mom and dad helping out potentially. Maybe one or both of them have a condo to sell or rent out. Maybe there's a little one on the way. Maybe that little one's already here. But that segment in a couple of different pockets of the city, especially the East End, is really just off the charts already. So April's going to be really intense.
Okay. Super helpful, and thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So now we are entering our rapid fire round of questions.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best neighborhood for first-time buyers?
It's a tie between East Danforth and Eglinton West.
Best neighborhood for first-time condo buyers?
Corktown.
Favorite building in the city, condo building in the city?
I'm going to do an outlier with 50 Quebec.
Favorite luxury neighborhood?
Rosedale. Charming old Rosedale.
Best neighborhood for long-term appreciation?
Annex.
Best condo concierge team in the city?
I don't have one. I'm going to give you my longest answer here. I've been showing a lot of condos recently, and if I can't sneak past the concierge and the concierge is polite with me and knows exactly where everything is, this is what we're looking for in nice concierges, good concierges. And I've been doing so many condo showings that I have not been bowled over by anybody recently. I've been able to sneak past a lot of security and front desk concierges. I'm like, well, okay, that's actually something I'm watching for when I'm checking out a building, is can I get past them, or how polite are they? And remember how much we used to love the team at 120 Bayview? That used to be a building where it was always a pleasure to go there because they knew exactly what they were going to do. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's that kind of quality that we're looking for in a concierge. Haven't seen it anywhere recently.
Interesting. Okay, well, fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
And your favorite residential Toronto street in the city? Like what street do you just love?
Dovercourt.
Okay.
It's got everything.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your opinions, your
My
boots
pleasure.
on the ground experiences. We're so glad to have had you here, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody else has to say about this.
Oh, you should be. Jessica, so happy to see your smiling face this morning, and so glad that we have some time carved out with you right now to go through some of your high-level thoughts on what you're seeing boots on the ground on the market. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. 10 weeks into 2024, how are you finding the market?
In my observations, there seems to be a lot more stability and a renewed sense of optimism, especially coming out of the bottom of last year, which has been nice to see for us, especially since it was such a struggle to bring buyers to the table in Q4 of 2023. Mm-hmm. And I think now people are finally starting to listen to us and see that it's probably a good idea to try to get ahead of a potential interest rate decrease. Mm-hmm. And it's been nice to see an elevated level of sophistication in the market where buyers are trying to get ahead of potential demand increases down the road. But I think there continues to be a lot of nuance in the market. So not everything is a shoo-in when it comes to selling. And what I have found is that lower hanging fruit, specifically for the first-time home buyer, tends to be the most discerning type of purchase. And personally, I think that's because a lot of the active buyers and sellers right now are those that are already in the market. And the people that are trying to enter the market, they're not really feeling that sense of pressure or duress that they have been in previous years when the markets have been a little bit more elevated. And so they're not making decisions as quickly, and they're being far more picky with their choices. And that's why you're seeing those studios, small one bedrooms, especially if they're not a really good floor plan or if they don't have a view, they're struggling to sell in a lot of cases.
Yeah, oftentimes with those first-time buyers, they don't know what they don't know, meaning they don't know what's coming when the market does pick up, and how they do have such a great opportunity to actually look and see a property before offering on it in some cases, and having the opportunity to negotiate one-on-one versus a time, which is probably coming up soon, maybe in the next year to year and a half, where that will all be by the wayside again, and it will be a very, very tight market at all levels. So I do find that interesting. Where are you discerning a break in the market? Is it between condos and low rise? Is it between low rise from, what price point to what price point? Like, how are you seeing those breaks? Because going back to the word you use, nuanced, it is very nuanced. And you are seeing certain segments heating up very, very quickly and becoming fiercely competitive. And you're seeing others sort of languishing, or you're seeing other segments where the great opportunities are selling, or the highly sought after properties are selling, whereas others are sitting.
I mean, in any market, properties that are poorly marketed, lack photos, or enough information, those are always going to be great opportunities, especially if your dedicated agent is well-versed in that specific condo building or neighborhood. But as of today, I'm really finding the little guys to be the leader in terms of opportunity. So small studios or tiny one bedrooms. Again, like I said, those properties that are geared probably more toward either an investor or first-time buyer, because that market segment is not operating under the same level of urgency, and they're being far more conservative with their decision-making and their ability to offer premium price points. And so I think whether you're an end user or whether you're an investor, this window of opportunity is very much still available to you, but not guaranteed to last for the foreseeable future. So that's where I would be looking right now, especially as an investor, because the investor pool has been completely decimated, to no surprise, with the current interest rates and rental market right now.
If you can sort of go back into a time machine, and it's now January 1, 2024, looking into the new year, where did you think we would be 10 weeks in versus where we actually are? And were there any surprises, or have there been any surprises for you thus far?
I've always had a lot of positivity when it comes to the resiliency of the Toronto real estate market. And I've always been very bullish on the Toronto real estate market. But I will say that I have been surprised at how quickly things have rebounded. That is something I didn't expect, especially so quickly after seemingly the very bottom in December of last year. It seemed like there was a very significant overnight shift in about mid-January that is continuously proving to be very steady activity. So even though I knew that buyers would come back in the new year, which they typically do, I didn't expect it to be as fast and furious as it is now, especially in the freehold sector.
Yeah, I've heard you say this before. Never, ever underestimate the Toronto real estate market. And those are true, true words, no matter where we are. And how do you see things shaping up? I mean, we're entering into the traditional spring market. How do you see the market shaping up for spring 2024?
I think that the activity that we're seeing today is going to continue pretty steadily well into the spring and summer. I would tell those that are relying on an interest rate decrease happening tomorrow to tread carefully. I think making decisions today based on a forthcoming interest rate anytime soon is speculatory. And I don't know that anyone really knows when that is going to happen. Sure, eventually at some point, but I would say a smart investor will plan on an interest rate decrease in the next year. But anytime sooner than that, I think you're taking a big risk unnecessarily. And like I said, there's still great opportunities, especially in the condo sectors. Take risks, but take calculated risks.
Yeah, that's great advice. Always invest for the long term, because in the short term, it's very difficult to predict what is going to happen. And going back to your opportunity or idea of opportunity in the condo market, I mean, if anybody is watching what's happening in pre-construction and anyone is looking at the slowdown of the future pipeline, which is going to actually come down to a dribble in 3 to 4 years, we'll see great opportunities on the condo side of things once things sort of rebound and immigration continues to go at the tear that it is.
For sure. And I also just think that they're not building condos the way that they used to. And that's going to continue to decline as the cost to produce a condo goes up.
Oh, yeah.
So there is a lot of inherent value in having the opportunity to buy something that you can touch and feel in a building that's already established a reputation, especially today.
No, that's such a good point, because if you look at the cost to build a condo and down, like you haven't seen, despite the slowdown in pre-construction, you haven't seen a decrease in pre-construction pricing
No.
because they just can't build for less than in downtown Toronto, $1,600 a square foot.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because this is supply that we so desperately need. And I think a lot of people fail to consider that we can't just put anything out there. There still needs to be that level of quality supply. And when buildings are produced and they have terrible floor plans or they have shared balconies with their neighbors, that doesn't really help the problem. And all it does is it puts further pressure and demand on a unit that does have a reasonable layout or the value of a real bedroom door, which I'm sure so many of our listeners can relate to.
Absolutely. And what advice are you giving both buyer and seller clients? So let's start with the buyers and then we'll move into sellers.
For buyers, I'm essentially advising them to jump in with both feet right now because of the level of opportunity that is still on the table. But I very fervently believe that that window is closing soon. And I think that the market has already proved its sense of resiliency and its sense of long-term growth. And I'm very much a proponent that if something is in front of you and it looks right and it feels right, you owe it to yourself to jump in with both feet as opposed to asking yourself, what if it drops even further? Somebody that has long-term goals is not going to be influenced by the small dips that occur on a day-to-day, because the long-term trajectory of Toronto is always going to look very positive and prominent just based on the fundamentals of supply and demand.
Okay. And what about sellers?
It's a bit more of a tricky thing. I think seller expectations continue to be inflated just based on the last 2 decades of activity in Toronto. So we're advising our sellers to keep expectations relatively low because, like I said earlier, buyers are still very discerning. They don't have that same sense of urgency that they have had in previous sellers' markets.
Mm-hmm.
So I am telling them to really take a hard look at market value and prepare for a much bigger sliding scale in terms of value, whereas in previous years, it's almost always been that upper echelon number, and it's been a little bit more of a shoe-in. So I think any seller that is not banking on a record-breaking sale in 2 hours on the market will be able to position themselves in a very smart way, and they can make other plans without being under financial duress.
And one of the most difficult questions, especially in a shifting market, but in any market, when we advise our clients who have to buy and sell, how are you handling those type of conversations right now with your clients?
So it's very much specific to the individual, the type of advice that I would give. But generally, we try to position our clients to conquer the more challenged endeavors first and then the easier ones second. Right now, in most cases, that is selling first and then purchasing, especially because there is a certain level of unreliability when it comes to selling a property. It's getting more and more difficult to predict. And so having that indisputable, quantifiable data to make decisions on your purchase is being far more beneficial, especially because it feels like we're not seeing that same level of volatility day to day. Like I said earlier, there's more of a stable environment and climate. So it allows somebody to take their time selling and then acquire property after without taking any risks on what they can reasonably afford. The other thing I'll say is that a lot of properties right now are requiring a longer close. This is something we're not typically used to seeing. Usually the status quo is 30 days, but right now I'm seeing a lot of 60, 90, 120-day closings, which can make it challenging to line up those two buy and sell plays specifically. So something as well to consider for anyone who's looking to achieve both.
Interesting. And that perfectly blends in with our next and final question of this segment. I've always wanted to say that. Are there any interesting trends or things that you're seeing right now, boots on the ground, that's happening in the market? So I think that was one great example. Are there any other things that you're seeing that's changing right in front of your eyes?
Not specifically.
Well, I do think it's really interesting what you were just talking about.
Yeah,
how
I mean,
we're
other
seeing-
than that, I'm trying to think of something else, but not specifically, other than property selling with a much longer closing date.
Mhm.
And that's very new for me and for
Yeah.
the Toronto real estate market.
For sure. Well, that's a great answer. Okay, so now we are in the rapid fire question and answer segment of our discussion. Best neighborhood for first-time buyers.
The Junction,
Best neighborhood for first-time condo buyers.
West Queen West.
Favorite condo building in Toronto.
Toss up between two.
Okay.
505 Richmond, the Waterworks.
Yep.
I've always been a big fan of 383 Sorority.
Favorite luxury neighborhood.
I'm going to go Yorkville just based on its density and accessibility.
Good answer. Best neighborhood for long-term appreciation.
Leslieville.
Best building concierge in the city.
I'm going to go 505 Richmond again. They crush it there.
Okay. And your favorite Toronto residential street. We're going to wrap it up with this one right here.
Manning.
Nice. Awesome. Well, Jess, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your thoughts and boots on the ground, what you're seeing in the market. We're so happy to have had your thoughts and insights today. And I hope you have a really great day.
Thank you. Likewise.
Reuben. We are so grateful to have you here and looking forward to having your insights into what you're seeing boots on the ground in the market today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Okay, awesome. So let's get into it. We are 10 weeks into 2024. How are you finding the market right now?
From an overall trajectory standpoint, it's slowly being dragged up. It's a little bit all over the place. Some properties are kind of jumping ahead of the curve. Some are lagging behind. But if you look at it from a macro perspective, we are inching our way up there.
And are you seeing then a transition from where we were Q4 2023 at the end of the year?
Oh, absolutely. I think both from a price perspective and an activity perspective, it is night and day versus what we were seeing this past fall.
And how about from a sentiment perspective?
From a sentiment perspective as well, I think a lot of people have been keeping a close eye on interest rates. And now the waters have been calmed. There are rumblings of decreases in the future. People are trying to get ahead of the curve.
Is it how you predicted things would be? Like, let's say it's the beginning of the year, we're back in time, we are looking 10 weeks into the future now. Is what we are seeing or experiencing 10 weeks in where you thought we would be? And have there been any surprises? And if so, what would they be?
Overall, I think it's as expected and kind of what I thought would be as we started the year. I think the one thing that surprised me a little bit, but looking back on it, it probably shouldn't have, is just kind of the increase in overall activity and number of offers. What we haven't seen is that necessarily correlate into a steep increase in prices. But I think what I'm seeing is that buyers are kind of starting to dip their toes back into the offer process. And then they want to do it a couple of times before they're probably ready to go all in.
Okay. And how do you see things shaping up from where we are at today through the spring market, which is traditionally one of the busiest periods of the year?
I think from a kind of overall price and resale perspective, I don't think the numbers are going to change drastically. I think we are still going to be on that slow and steady upward trajectory that we've kind of been on since December. What I do think is that there will be more and more buyers starting to begin their buying process. And as a result, I hope that there will also be an increase in quality inventory.
Amen to that. We definitely could use more quality inventory out there for sure. And are you seeing any type of differentiations, like you're talking about the curve, but differentiations in price points or asset classes in terms of the activity that you're seeing?
I would say in terms of asset classes more than price points. I think no matter the price point in freehold properties, there is still a lot of activity, both showing activity and offer activity. Where we haven't yet fully seen that catch up is the condo market. And so I think irrespective of the price point in freehold, that activity is there, whether it's a $1.2 million starter home or a $3.5 million house. Both, I think, are seeing high levels of activity. And I think as we get further along into the year, that will start to trickle down more into condos as well.
And how are landlords faring in the rental market right now?
Terribly. Terribly. It's really from what perspective you're looking at it. I would say if you're just looking at it from where we are from year over year, it's not good. Rental rates are down. Inventory is way up. People aren't moving as much. If you kind of take a step back and look at it from 2 years ago, then yes, we're still in a fantastic position. But over the past 16, 18 months, now is probably the worst time to be trying to rent out a property.
And do you think that what does that trend look like in your opinion into, let's say, into the summer? Like traditionally, this is a slower time, but I think there's also some larger forces that are keeping vacancies at a higher rate than normal.
Yes.
But like, how do you see this playing out into the summer or fall?
I think no matter what, prices will start to increase as the weather warms up. If you look back historically, usually that month is March, where there's a big jump from February to March. I haven't seen that yet. So maybe that's delayed a little bit this year. Maybe that doesn't start till April or May. I still think that come June, July, August, the rental market is going to be booming as it is every year. But as it has been for the past 4 or 5 months, and I think for the next 2-3 months, things are still going to be fairly slow and prices are going to be suppressed.
Okay. And what advice, let's shift gears here. Let's talk about your buyer clients. What advice are you giving to your buyer clients right now going into the spring?
I think I've realized that the advice that I give my buyer clients is much of the same, no matter kind of what is happening in the market.
Okay.
And that's really just to be prepared and to be ready. And they need to be familiar with the neighborhoods, with the property types, with the offer process, so that whether it's in this market or what was happening 6 months ago or what happens six months from now, they are fully prepared and they are fully ready when that opportunity arises so that they can act and not react to what's happening.
Great advice. Great advice. Sellers, what kind of conversations are you having with sellers right now?
Yeah, I mean, touching back a little bit on what we just spoke about with landlords, this time last year, we were talking a lot of sellers into being, I guess, accidental landlords because the market was not what it was 12 months before, and rental rates had skyrocketed. And so that is no longer the case in the rental market, and resale prices are trending in the right direction. So I think if sellers are realistic and if they're not necessarily expecting March 2022, then now is a great time to sell the property.
I love the term accidental landlords because we definitely were having conversations along those lines a year ago, for sure. I've never heard that term. It's a great one. Buy or sell? Sell or buy? Where are you leaning and what type of conversations are you having for people looking to do both?
I don't think it can be really generalized, but if I had to, I would separate it from condo owners and freehold owners. If I owned a condo right now and if I were looking to move up, I would sell my condo first because the condo market it is not what the freehold market is right now. That being said, if I was a freehold owner, I would buy first, knowing that activity and prices for freehold is considerably stronger than they are for condos right now.
It seems like based on what you're saying, if you're a downsizer, meaning moving from a house to a condo, you might be in the strongest position in the market.
100%. 100%.
And are there any interesting trends or things that you're seeing right now, boots on the ground in the market, that might not be consistent with the data or maybe even something that would be included in the data? And it can be anything that you're seeing from your day-to-day experiences.
I would say really it's going back to the activity level and how many people are going through every property, whether they sell or not. You walk into whether it is a condo or a freehold house, and there are way more cards left on the table than you think there would be. There are significantly more offers than you might expect. And again, that's not necessarily reflective in price yet, but I think it will absolutely, it's foreshadowing what's going to come in the next 6 to 8 months.
Okay, now we go into the highly critically acclaimed rapid fire section of our interview. Are you ready, Reuben?
I am ready.
Best neighborhood for first-time buyers in Toronto?
Bloordale.
Nice. Best neighborhood for first-time condo buyers in Toronto?
I'm going to go Corktown/St. Lawrence.
Nice. Okay. Favorite condo building in the city?
I don't think that's a question. Enigma on the Park.
We have a long lineage of history at Fox Marin with that building.
We did.
Yes, we do. Favorite luxury neighborhood, Reuben?
I'm going to say Rosedale, but more specifically the blocks just east and west of Yonge Street, not deep heart Rosedale, but the more accessible, amenity-rich Rosedale.
Best neighborhood for long-term appreciation?
Caledonia Fairbanks.
Ooh, I love it. That's a good one. That's a really, really strong answer and a little bit off the beaten track. So
yes,
good on you for that one. Best building concierge team in the city of Toronto?
I am going to say 25 The Esplanade.
Excellent. Okay, and your favorite residential Toronto street?
This one's probably the hardest, but sticking to my Rosedale theme, I am going to say Roxborough.
Excellent. Well, great answers, Reuben. Thank you so much for sticking around today and for your insights. Always great to have you on the Toronto Real Estate Podcast. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. So that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us. If you found this information valuable, remember to like or subscribe this podcast for the latest Toronto real estate trends, forecasts, and practical advice. And we look forward to connecting with you soon.